Here's what happened, guys. I have not seen the movie Truman Show, but from looking at the trailer and then what other people have said about this movie, that's the feeling right now. It is. It feels like this illusion is starting to break apart here in the United States. It has felt like there has been one way we have grown up within the culture of this country, and now things are falling apart for the illusion, and you start to then question a lot when that happens. And I've said it before here on the show, when it doesn't make any sense, be curious, ask questions. Um, the Epstein files, then diving into CIA program MK Ultra. What is going on right now with the mass psychological operations online to these distractions that keep popping up, this feeling of overwhelm that I know I'm not alone as a small business owner feeling, because I've had conversations with you guys. It's this chaos that is out there. And what can happen when we experience a lot of chaos is we can get overwhelmed and then shut down and want things to just calm down. And it's in those moments where what do we give up for things to shut down when it comes to our individual freedoms? And that is where we have to be on guard. So welcome back to the RD Week show. Let's get into it today and talk about an important point with all that is out there right now. When it doesn't make sense, be curious, ask questions. Don't shut down, ignore, and try to move on. Because right now, it is feeling like this illusion of how we've grown up. I think about, for me, growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, it feels like this illusion is breaking apart for how we grew up. And when that happens, you can start to question a lot about even our own history as a country, and getting into understanding programs like MK Ultra, CIA mind control program, and understanding that, and then having to ask myself, okay, it said it was shut down, but was it really shut down? And then how certain things don't make sense, getting into these mass protests relating to ICE. And I want to get into that a little bit here on today's show. And then looking at just the amount of debt that we've collected as a country overall, all of these different points, they feel like puzzle pieces. And it's like, how do we bring all these puzzle pieces together to really understand the full picture? And for me, it has felt like a fire hose of information these past few months. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break tomorrow to continue to take in all this information and try to put these pieces all together for you. Because as a small business owner, why this is very important is that in chaos, you do not thrive as a small business owner. That could be why you have this big urge to want to ignore what is going on all around you, thinking of it as noise, and then just wanting to focus on improving your own quality of life and your business, continuing to focus on it growing, because I know just how much is involved in that. And if you have never been a small business owner, those people, they don't get it. And so, but I get it. And so I know that you already have a ton going on, but you have to remember, and I said it before, I recommend reading the book Fourth Turning. This is a moment in history where massive change is inevitable. It's 65 to 80 years in the making for this massive change. And we, as small business owners, have to take on even more responsibility and move forward and move through this and become a leading voice in that change. And to be a light for others to rally around, because I do believe that small business owners are the future leaders of this country, and that America's future is a small business renaissance. But it's going to require a lot of work to be able to move forward in doing that. So when I first got started as a small business owner back in 2014 as a DJ and partying a lot, going out and drinking, sometimes 6 nights in a week, and that and a few other things is what led me to sobriety back in 2018, January 1st of 2018. So back then in 2014, when I got first started in business, the national debt was under $18 trillion. Now it's over $38 trillion. This is just crazy if you really take the time to think about that, of how fast that debt has escalated over the years. And it's such a pressing issue that we must continue to talk about, because we've got to figure out how to handle that debt. Ownership, when we think about that, if you have a ton of debt, it feels overwhelming, and you're a slave to that debt. It becomes so overwhelming that it consumes your each and every day, and you're just trying to figure out how to get this debt down, because you have the increases in the interest over time, and you're taking ownership of that to try to figure out a way to move forward. And we as a country have to take ownership of this debt and figure it out. But it just seems like there's been all of these different distractions that have come up, and there's these constant what feel like psychological operations to divide us as Americans to right and left and put us into these boxes. But again, the worldview that's really important to have is that there is the powerful and then the rest of us. And looking at the Epstein files, you start to see how disgusting and evil some of these people are for the powerful. And now they're starting to come. There's names that are coming out that are getting that we're able to see, and there needs to be accountability, because my fear is if there's no accountability, what happens? Where do we go as a country? Where does that lead into more destruction potentially and more chaos? And that is something that is going to tear our country apart. And we as small business owners, as the future leaders of this country, have to bring accountability into focus. And we need to hold people accountable. We need to hold ourselves accountable. And we need to move forward in order to come together and to make sure that, one, we protect our kids, and we are protecting what it means to be an American, the American dream. We are preserving our individual rights. And one of them is the freedom of speech, to be able to have conversations like this, to voice our disagreements, and to be in a space where we can disagree and have different points of view. And then also we can hold accountable our government. And we have to remind ourselves that our government is there to support us, the American citizens, not to control us, not to dictate what we do in every single aspect of our life, and not to rule over us. And looking at the Epstein files, I'm seeing different stories that are coming up from the Epstein files. I'm taking the time to go through all the different emails. I mean, you have beef jerky as like what looks like a code word. You got pizza, and how many times pizza's mentioned, and it seems like that's a code word, and so many other different stories that are coming up. And again, as I said, it's a fire hose of information. And so we cannot just move on from this. We cannot. And as small business owners, I think about how small businesses are regarded in this country, and there's a lot of support for small businesses, and that is why, as small business owners, we cannot ignore this. And so it's like, well, how do we move forward? Well, one, accountability is really important, and that is holding our elected officials accountable, and making sure that we're voicing that we want accountability. And so I go back to this line where you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you, and so it's time that we care about politics, so that it cares for us in a way that is supporting the American people. And this is knowing your elected officials in your area, from local, state to then federal, understanding who your senators are, your House of Representatives, emailing, calling when, and especially about what is going on right now, looking at these Epstein files. It's like we need to understand who are in these files, the demonic and satanic things that are in these files. We need to understand who is responsible for this, and making sure that accountability is there for these people. Has to be. So what I've noticed at the beginning of this year, of thinking of, okay, well, we've had so many of these we've had a bunch of different events that have unfolded, and specifically what I want to talk about quickly here, and then I'm going to continue to get further into this next week. And I've said it before, I have a former U.S. Border Patrol agent, station leader, that has provided some amazing information and clarity for me of understanding what is going on currently on the ground when it comes to immigration policy, and then just understanding the different policies involved with immigration enforcement. And then when I looked at when I looked at the past protests that have been happening, these massive protests, for me, I start to question, okay, were these distractions? Were these distractions? And were the rhetoric that was being pushed out there that was causing an escalation in conflict and anger, was that pouring gasoline onto the fire of the fire of distraction? And it really got me to be curious and ask more questions relating to specifically these three protests that happened in January. And the first one was a statewide protest in Minnesota, and it was an economic blackout too that happened, where over 700, from what I'd seen, over 700 small businesses closed down in order to protest against ICE. But then I asked myself this question where I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. How does closing down the business protest against ICE? Meaning, shouldn't all those that are protesting, after they're done protesting for those first few hours, go and support small businesses because of all the chaos that's been happening with people in the streets, to blocking storefronts and making it hard for people to go out into the community and support local businesses? Wouldn't this be the time to then come together and actually support small businesses? So why is there what feels like a massive pressure for these small businesses to close down for the day? What impact does that have on their business? And as you know, as a small business owner, it has a massive impact. And actually, if you're in Minnesota and you experience that pressure and you didn't close down that day, I like to read your story in the comments. Like, please let me know in the comments, because for me, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like this would be a moment for there to be a rally of supporting small businesses because of how hurt they've been, and that comes back to then the bigger puzzle, bigger picture of looking at these distractions that pop up, and what feels like these little maneuvers, psychological operations that are being done, and you have to ask yourself, okay, well, who's funding these? What organizations, and take the time to go through that. And that can be a lot for you, a small business owner, because I'm trying to share this information with you, and it's a lot for me to do this. So I definitely want to take some time to understand more about these organizations, but I don't want to go too much down that road. What is really important is to start questioning more. That's really important as a small business owner, because then you can, instead of getting pressured into something, you can take the time to think for yourself and have agency in your decision making of, does this decision actually make sense? And so that was one that I looked at and I was like, that doesn't sit right with me. And you'll get all these different reasons for why it does. And that is where you have to be on guard. The other one that also didn't make any sense was the national shutdown that then happened. It was on January 30th. So again, the statewide was the January 23rd. Then the national shutdown was January 30th. And similarly, there was small businesses in different cities like Seattle, LA, Chicago that voluntarily closed down. And for me, that didn't make any sense either. It's like, why would you close down the small business? I mean, there's the argument of we're creating a safe space. It's out of support for illegal immigrants, and it's for against ICE. But it's like, why not have the people, the community, support the local businesses so that you can support the overall community? Why shut them down? You can still go and protest, and then after the protest, go and support these businesses. It doesn't make sense. And that is where I then go into, okay, who would be against small business owners owning their small business? Who could that be? Could that be the government? Could that be Marxists? Could that be both? Thinking of ideology there. It gets you to question a little bit more of like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm going to close down the business. Already, I'm struggling with all the chaos that's out there right now, and then I'm going to shut it down for a full day. What then impact does that have on being able to just continue to open up the next day and keep staying in business? Shouldn't it be the opposite? Out of protest for ICE going to support local businesses and support our communities and rally around our communities? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I've said before here, it is tragic the deaths that have happened relating to the protesting of ICE. And also, we got to remind ourselves that we cannot obstruct law enforcement either. And it's important to understand our rights as American citizens and not to think that we are Batman either. And it's really important to be informed and understand what is going on and not to be placed into situations where there's a higher risk that can unfold. And so when I think to what has gone on over the past few months, it gets me to question a lot of, okay, what is this distracting from? In Minnesota, before the massive protests, you had massive fraud that was unfolding, and that is still unfolding. Estimates are in the billions. And I said it before, it's not the only state showing signs of massive fraud of our tax-paying dollars. So that was another one that came up. And then the last one was that I want to talk about today was the ICE Out of Everywhere National Day of Action. And this was on January 31st. And what got me angry about this was seeing a video from a mom who had gone to a middle school to pick up her kid. And it was, she was expecting a routine pickup for dismissal. And then when she got there and she was recording, there were hundreds of kids just all out in front of the school, blocking traffic. And they had signs protesting ICE for this national day. And these are middle schoolers. I think back to when I was in 7th grade and I'm just like trying to hang out with my friends and just thinking back to like that time and now and then seeing that video and I'm like, what is going on here? for me, it becomes another reason to want to homeschool my future kids. Because think about it, over $3 trillion have been spent on the Department of Education since it was established in 1979. And you got to ask yourself the question, has education gotten better or worse here in the US? And to see something like this on camera, and then the mom goes in and administrators are just like hanging out. It looks like, they're at their desks, like as if it's like another day is what it feels like. And all these kids are out on the road, and you think, okay, are there not administrators out there trying, making sure that people are able to be the kids are able to be in designated areas, and people aren't that are driving by, making sure that kids are out of the road? Like, what's going on here? What's happening here? It's like just opening up the doors and letting the kids go out and just do whatever. Like, what? So that is where, for me, it also didn't make sense. And what we as small business owners have to remember is that with economic disorder, it can lead to political radicalism. And we are seeing a lot of chaos unfolding in different parts of the country. And for me, my fear that comes up is that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And with more chaos, what do we as American citizens give up in that chaos for our individual freedoms? And so as small business owners, we must unite and lead the way. You have the peacemaker and the fighter, and we must come together. I share this example where the peacemaker is the one. I know you small business owners that are out there that are the peacemaker, where you just want to make sure everyone is welcomed, having a great time, and it's such an admirable quality. And you'd give to all the nonprofits if you had all this money, you just give to all nonprofits because you just believe that they're all doing great things. But then you also have to have the fighter archetype of the small business owner coming in to also team up with you. The one that is starting to question these nonprofits, asking for receipts. Does the money actually go to what they say they support as a nonprofit? Because there is massive fraud that is out there. It does exist. And there is evilness that is out there. That is what I've realized coming back to Christianity and my faith and reading the Bible all the way through and reading Revelations and realizing this world is run by Satan, and thinking outside of the spiritual, it's run by an oligarchy, and it goes back to the worldview of the powerful and the rest of us. And the illusion is shattering that the powerful had on us. And now, with massive change moving forward, we have an opportunity to decide what the future is going to be like. And for me personally, I believe America's future is small business renaissance, an expansion of ideas and creativity, amazing opportunity for Americans. I see that future. What it's going to involve is a lot of hard work, though. There's a big mess to clean up. You think about the over $38 trillion mess as just one example. And so it is going to be a massive challenge, but it's setting ourselves up for the greatest comeback in history. And so for next week, I'm going to continue to share with you more about the immigration policies from my source, so you just understand when you're able, like for me, when I was able to understand the policies and actually what is going on and cut through all the noise that's out there, propaganda and psychological operations that is really hurting genuine people, and getting them brainwashed. And it just makes me so angry seeing that, where people that are just genuine thinking that they're going out there and that they're listening to this propaganda, and they get absorbed by it, and then they can make really terrible decisions for themselves. And that is something I want to avoid so much moving forward, is being able to avoid really terrible situations for the American people and create more opportunities for improving our quality of life. But it's going to be taking a lot of us to come together and unite. And that is what this movement is about, is uniting to move forward and to better the quality of life, not just of ourselves, our families, our communities, but overall our country. Because I go back to e pluribus unum, out of many one. We can have different views and disagree on different topics and ideas, but we got to remember we are Americans. And when we can come back to that and realize that we can be neighbors rather than strangers, and rather than a nation of strangers, I really do believe we can fight for what is beautiful, true, and good, and continue to spread that throughout this country. So if you'd like to connect in person with other small business owners that care about this country, and for me, I love this country. I hope you love this country too. You can join us in Charleston, South Carolina with over 300 other small business owners on January 14th and 15th at Future Fest. I'm really excited to be able to see you guys there. It's going to be incredible for the lineup of speakers that I'm excited to continue to reveal to you guys in the a few months, or what am I saying with that? Over the course of the next few months, continue to share that with you for these updates. And how you can, I'll put a link in the description for you to be able to check out the website. And then I will see you guys next week.